During the 1920s, the economy grew quickly and people felt optimistic everywhere. Factory workers earned steady wages and walked home proudly with money. Families filled busy shops, happily buying new products and modern conveniences. Entrepreneurs opened new stores hoping to benefit from the booming economy. Factories expanded production, sending endless products into growing markets. Construction workers built new buildings as cities expanded rapidly upward. Skylines changed quickly as new towers appeared across growing American cities. People everywhere spent money confidently, while businesses enjoyed massive growth. Money flowed constantly between companies and customers in the booming economy. Many families proudly purchased their very first automobile. Others bought exciting home appliances like radios and refrigerators. Across the country, people enjoyed the prosperity of the roaring 20s. Economic charts continued climbing upward as growth seemed unstoppable. Excited investors watched the stock market rise higher every single day. Friends gathered together discussing incredible profits from stock investments. Newspapers proudly reported stories about the unstoppable stock market boom. Headlines everywhere celebrated the massive growth of stock prices. Soon, crowds of people rushed eagerly into the stock market. Traders watched stock charts climb higher and higher with excitement. Stock prices soared rapidly as optimism filled the entire market. Investors celebrated profits and believed their wealth would keep growing. Many people believed stocks were the easiest way to become rich. Some investors proudly told friends they would soon become millionaires. Every day, more people joined the rapidly growing stock market crowd. Huge crowds entered the stock exchange hoping for easy profits. Meanwhile, a dangerous financial bubble quietly began forming inside the market. The bubble slowly grew larger as more money poured into stocks. Investors stood beneath the growing bubble without noticing the danger. Some investors even borrowed money from banks to buy stocks. Using borrowed money, they bought even more shares. Soon, borrowed money flooded into the already overheated stock market. Still, the stock charts continued rising quickly. Crowds celebrated what seemed like unstoppable financial success. Many believed the stock market could never possibly fall. Above them, the giant financial bubble floated larger than ever. Then, a small crack appeared inside the fragile bubble. A few investors finally began noticing something felt wrong. Stock charts started shaking slightly instead of rising smoothly. Some investors panicked as prices moved unpredictably. Nervous crowds stared anxiously at the changing market prices. Meanwhile, the massive bubble began reaching its breaking point. Cracks spread quickly across the unstable financial bubble. Suddenly, the giant financial bubble began tearing apart above the investors. Suddenly, the giant stock market bubble burst above investors. Investors froze as stock prices suddenly started falling fast. Charts that once climbed upward now dropped sharply down. Inside the exchange, crowds of investors began panicking. Traders shouted while trying to sell their stocks quickly. Everyone rushed to sell their shares at once. Huge crowds ran toward exits as panic spread. Stock prices collapsed rapidly across the entire market. Some investors watched their life savings disappear instantly. Traders became overwhelmed by desperate phone calls and sell orders. A huge wave of selling flooded the market quickly. Charts showed a terrifying crash spreading everywhere. Investors stood shocked as prices kept collapsing. Bankers watched the crash with growing concern. Many investors realized their borrowed money was now dangerous. Banks issued urgent margin calls demanding repayment. Investors were forced to sell everything to repay debts. Bankers demanded repayment as financial pressure increased. Millions suddenly lost their life savings overnight. Some investors sat quietly beside empty wallets. Soon, newspapers announced the stock market crash of 1929. Crowds gathered reading shocking news about the collapse. Business owners began worrying about the economy. Outside the exchange, worried investors gathered silently. Charts showed trillions of dollars disappearing overnight. People realized the great economic boom had ended. Investors slowly left the stock exchange building. Dark clouds of crisis seemed to cover cities. Factories slowed production as uncertainty spread. Workers heard rumors about layoffs and job losses. People became cautious with money after the crash. Banks now looked unstable after heavy losses. Bankers feared people would withdraw their savings. Soon, long lines formed outside banks. Crowds rushed to withdraw their remaining savings. Bank vaults slowly ran out of money. Some banks closed after running out of cash. People stood outside shocked at the closures. More banks began failing across the country. The crisis spread like falling dominoes. Workers lost jobs as companies closed. Long unemployment lines formed outside factories. Long lines of desperate people formed outside banks during the crisis. Many waited nervously, hoping to withdraw their remaining savings. Inside, bank tellers sadly explained the bank had no money left. Vaults that once held savings were now completely empty. Soon, many banks closed their doors permanently across the country. Worried crowds gathered outside banks that had suddenly shut down. Across the nation, more banks began collapsing one after another. Maps soon showed bank failures spreading rapidly across the country. Some families discovered their life savings had vanished overnight. Many people stopped trusting banks and hid money under mattresses. Without spending, the entire economy began slowing dramatically. Stores became empty as customers stopped buying goods. Shop owners sat sadly in quiet stores without customers. Factories struggled as demand for products suddenly disappeared. Soon, factory machines stopped running completely. Workers slowly walked out after losing their jobs. Huge groups of unemployed workers searched desperately for work. Long unemployment lines formed across many cities. Families struggled to pay bills during the deepening depression. Parents worried about whether they could feed their children. Charity kitchens served soup to families who had nothing. Simple soup kitchens became a lifeline for unemployed people. Some families built homes from scrap wood and metal. Entire shanty towns appeared outside major cities. Small homes made from scraps became shelter for struggling families. Many families now lived in deep poverty during the Depression. Cities showed heartbreaking scenes of unemployment and suffering. Some workers traveled constantly searching for any job. Many rode trains hoping to find work somewhere else. Jobless workers carried small bags as they searched town after town. Crowds gathered quickly around any sign advertising a job. Often, hundreds competed for just one position. Business owners sadly explained they had no jobs available. Many people began losing hope in the struggling economy. Charts showed unemployment rising dramatically across the country. Soon, a huge part of the population was unemployed. The country struggled through the worst economic crisis in history. Still, people waited patiently, hoping the economy would recover someday. Desperate citizens demanded strong government action to fix the collapsing economy. Government leaders gathered urgently to discuss possible solutions for recovery. Soon, the nation held an election, hoping for new leadership. Millions listened carefully to his calming radio broadcasts. Soon, Roosevelt announced an ambitious recovery plan called the New Deal. The government quickly launched large programs designed to rebuild the economy. Many unemployed workers received government jobs building new roads. Construction crews built bridges and vital infrastructure across the country. Huge dam projects created electricity and jobs for thousands. Large public works projects appeared everywhere across the nation. After years of struggle, unemployed workers finally found jobs again. People happily returned to work after long periods without income. Meanwhile, the government began stabilizing banks after widespread failures. Slowly, people started trusting banks again and depositing money. New regulations helped the government supervise and protect the banking system. Special programs were also created to support struggling farmers. Farmers finally received assistance through important government programs. New laws were introduced to protect investors inside the stock market. Government agencies began monitoring stock trading to prevent abuse. New labor policies helped workers receive fair wages and protections. Government programs also supported families suffering extreme poverty. Slowly, the economy began recovering after years of hardship. Factories gradually reopened and resumed producing goods again. Shops welcomed customers again as economic activity slowly returned. People cautiously began spending money again after years of fear. Economic charts slowly started rising upward once again. Unemployment numbers gradually began falling across the country. Workers returned to factories, offices, and construction jobs. Cities slowly became active again with businesses reopening. Communities worked together, rebuilding after the long economic crisis. Families once again felt hopeful about their future. The country slowly recovered from the devastating Great Depression. Governments and banks began working together to prevent future crises. The nation slowly learned from mistakes made during the boom. Soon, cities once again symbolized stability and economic growth. People looked forward to a stronger and more stable future. The country continued moving forward after surviving the Great Depression. Eventually, the economy reached a new period of stability.